Anya presses her ear to the heavy oak door. The ancient wood, cool against her cheek, vibrates with a low thrumming, the very pulse of the storm outside and the building's failing power grid. On her left, through the thick oak, she hears it again. The pained, ragged gasps of a wounded man, a bailiff she recognizes, struggling for air. And to her right, down a long, dark corridor that seems to stretch into an abyss, a whimpering sound, soft, almost like a child's, but laced with an adult's raw terror. That's Thorn. He's toying with a juror, making them suffer, drawing out the fear like a sommelier savoring a fine wine. She has one chance to move, to choose a path before the killer doubles back, his footsteps eerily silent despite his heavy frame. And she can only go one way. Hours earlier, the Alastair Finch Suffolk County Courthouse hummed with a different kind of tension. Not the dread that now seeped from its very stones, but the electric anticipation of a verdict. Anya Sharma stood before the jury, her voice clear and resonant, slicing through the thick air like a perfectly honed blade. The weight of weeks, months, years of preparation, of poring over gruesome evidence and chilling testimonies, culminated in this moment. Her tailored suit felt like a second skin, a professional armor, and her eyes, sharp and unwavering, locked onto the 12 faces that held Thorn's fate in their hands. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she began, her gaze sweeping over them. "For too long, Julian Thorn has sculpted his victims into macabre art. He has carved their terror into the city's memory, leaving a trail of unspeakable suffering. We have presented the evidence, piece by painstaking piece. We have shown you the monsters he created, and we have shown you the monster he truly is." Across the courtroom, Julian Thorn, the sculptor, sat impassive. His expression was a study in unsettling calm, a mask of almost spiritual serenity that mocked the heinous crimes Anya had so meticulously laid bare. He was handsome in a chilling way, his eyes a pale, unnerving blue that seemed to hold ancient, indifferent secrets. He met Anya's gaze, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips, a silent challenge that bristled through the courtroom. He believed he was beyond their laws, beyond their judgments. He had always believed that. Beside Anya, Mark Corrigan, a veteran bailiff whose face bore the etched lines of decades spent navigating the grim realities of justice, shifted subtly. His uniform, though crisp, couldn't hide the weariness in his bones. He caught Anya's eye, a silent nod of reassurance that spoke volumes of their shared purpose. He'd seen too much, knew the darkness of men like Thorn intimately, and he held a quiet hope that Anya's brilliance would finally cage this particular beast. On the defense side, Elias Vance leaned back in his chair, a picture of detached professionalism. His dark suit, impeccably cut, was a stark contrast to Thorn's stark white shirt. Elias had argued Thorn's twisted philosophy with a chilling eloquence that Anya found deeply disturbing. His eyes, though, were what truly unsettled her. They seemed to watch everything, absorbing details, analyzing not just the arguments, but the people making them. A calculating, almost predatory intelligence simmered beneath his composed exterior. Anya finished her closing, her voice swelling with a conviction that demanded justice. He is not an artist. He is a predator. And tonight, this court, this city, will finally tell Julian Thorn that his canvas is closed, his gruesome gallery shut down forever. A murmur rippled through the gallery. Reporters scribbled furiously. The judge's gavel hung poised, ready to descend. The air was charged, thick enough to taste, a blend of hope and a profound, lingering horror. Then, the first crack of thunder split the silence, a raw, primeval sound that shook the very foundations of the old courthouse. Rain began to lash against the ornate, arched windows, a sudden, violent deluge that drowned out the last gasps of the crowd. The judge, a stern woman with an unshakable presence, cleared her throat. The jury will now retire to deliberate. Just as the forewoman rose, a blinding flash of lightning illuminated the courtroom, followed almost instantly by a deafening crash that vibrated through the marble floor. The antique chandeliers, normally ablaze with warm light, flickered violently, then died, plunging the vast chamber into a sudden, suffocating darkness. A collective gasp swept through the room, quickly replaced by a wave of confused murmurs. The emergency lights, dim and sickly yellow, buzzed to life overhead, casting long, grotesque shadows that danced like specters. The thunderstorm raged outside, a furious percussion against the ancient stone, but even that couldn't drown out the distinct, sickening sound that followed. A single, sharp gunshot, echoing from the hallway just beyond the courtroom doors. Then, a series of metallic clangs, heavy steel doors slamming shut, one after another, sealing off the exits. An internal lockdown. The courthouse, a bastion of order and law, had become a tomb. Panic erupted. The murmurs became shouts. Anya's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the sudden chaos. Her mind, usually so precise and analytical, reeled. The gunshot, the lockdown. This wasn't a random power outage. This was coordinated, deliberate. Mark Corrigan, ever the professional, barked orders over the din. "Everyone stay calm, remain seated, bailiffs secure the doors." His voice, usually weary, now held an edge of urgency, of command. He moved swiftly, pushing through the bewildered crowd towards the main entrance. Anya pushed through the throng, her eyes scanning the faces, the rising fear. Her gaze instinctively found Thorne. He still sat, unmoving, in the sudden, eerie glow of the emergency lights. But the unsettling calm had shifted, evolved. There was a flicker in his pale eyes, a nascent, terrible excitement, a predator stirring. And then he was gone, a phantom swallowed by the shadows, leaving only the memory of that terrible knowing glint. Her breath hitched. Thorne. Free! "Mark!" Anya called out, her voice barely audible above the rising clamor. She spotted Elias Vance making his way through the chaos, moving with a surprising speed towards the side exit. "Elias!" Mark reached the main door, his hand on the cold steel, testing it. Grunted, his face grim in the sickly light. "Automatic lockdown. No power, no comms. We're cut off." He turned to the other bailiffs, his voice low, urgent. "Check the perimeter. Secure the jury, now." Anya reached him, her mind racing, piecing together the fragments. The gunshot! Mark, it wasn't from outside. It was from the holding cells. Thorne. He's escaped. The words tasted like ash. Mark's jaw tightened. He didn't need convincing. He knew the building, the protocols. This was beyond anything he'd encountered. "Stay close, Miss Sharma. Don't move without me." He pulled a heavy-duty flashlight from his belt, its beam cutting a stark path through the gloom. Just then, Elias Vance emerged from the side hallway, his face uncharacteristically pale, but his composure still holding. "The exit gates are sealed as well. No way out. The storm must have knocked out the main grid, and the internal backup locked us in." His explanation, though plausible, felt too rehearsed, too immediate. Anya's lawyer's instinct, sharpened by years of cross-examination, prickled. And the gunshot? Anya pressed, her eyes on Elias. Elias hesitated for a fraction of a second too long. A misunderstanding, perhaps. A guard reacting to the blackout. Panic. His gaze flickered, avoiding hers. But Mark knew better. He'd heard that sound too many times. "No, Mr. Vance, that was no misunderstanding." He turned, his flashlight beam sweeping the hallway beyond the courtroom doors, illuminating a horrifying scene. 2 security guards lay sprawled on the cold marble, unmoving. A dark, glistening pool spread beneath one of them. Their throats were slit, precise and clean. One of them, a young man named Peterson, still clutched his service pistol, unfired. A sickening chill snaked its way up Anya's spine. The sculptor. This wasn't chaos. This was art. "He's not just escaped," Mark whispered, his voice hoarse with dread. "He's armed himself, and he's in control." The realization hit them like a physical blow. Julian Thorne, a man who relished torment and psychological torture, was loose in the labyrinthine courthouse, now his personal hunting ground. The initial shock gave way to a cold, hard resolve. There were others in the building, jurors, staff, visitors. They needed to move, to warn, to survive. "We can't stay here," Anya stated, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "He'll pick us off." She thought of the courthouse blueprints, memorized during her preparations. Every secret passage and service tunnel etched into her mind. "Agreed," Mark said, his flashlight beam cutting a path into the shadowy corridor. "We need to get to the main security office. Maybe there's a way to override the lockdown from there, or at least get comms out." Elias nodded, his expression grim. "I know a shortcut through the staff corridors. Less chance of running into anyone, or anything." His eyes darted nervously down the dark hall. Anya looked at him, then at Mark. The bailiff seemed to trust Elias's knowledge of the building, a remnant of their shared professional world. But Anya's gut twisted. Elias's sudden familiarity with the hidden paths felt too convenient. They moved, a strange, desperate trio, abandoning the main halls for the narrow, oppressive service corridors. The air grew colder, heavy with the scent of old dust and stale electricity. The emergency lights here were even dimmer, buzzing erratically, creating an oppressive atmosphere that pressed in on them. Every creak of the ancient building, every distant slam of a door, every rustle of their clothes against the walls was amplified, sharpened into a potential threat. Anya felt the courthouse transforming around her. The familiar marble halls, once symbols of justice and order, now felt like the constricted arteries of a living, breathing monster. Shadows stretched and twisted, turning statues into grotesque figures, pillars into lurking sentinels. The echoes of their own footsteps bounced back at them, a cruel mockery in the suffocating silence. "We need to be silent," Mark whispered, his hand on the holster of his sidearm. He was older, slower, but his senses were honed by years of danger. They navigated a maze of utility pipes, exposed wiring, and unmarked doors. Elias, surprisingly agile, led the way, his steps light, almost eager. "Just through here," he'd say, gesturing down another indistinguishable passage. They found themselves in a maintenance tunnel, low and cramped, smelling of mildew and forgotten things. The hum of the emergency lights was louder here, a high-pitched whine that grated on Anya's nerves. Somewhere, far away, they heard it, a woman's scream, choked off abruptly. Then, silence. Utter, profound silence. Mark froze, his face etched with pain. God help them. Anya felt a cold dread settle deep in her bones. Thorne was already at work. He wasn't just killing, he was judging, as his case files had so chillingly detailed, reenacting his signature crimes, turning the halls of justice into his stage. "We have to keep moving," Anya urged, her voice tight. "The security office. It's our best chance." Elias nodded. "Almost there. We just need to go down this stairwell, through the sub-level archives, and it's right beyond." They descended into a deeper darkness. The air grew heavy, smelling of old paper and dust. The emergency lights here were sparse, flickering, barely illuminating the narrow concrete stairs. Anya felt a claustrophobic wave wash over her. As they moved through the archive's sub-levels, a vast, echoing cavern of steel shelves packed with forgotten legal histories, Elias's suggestions began to take on a strange pattern. "This way, it's shorter," he'd say, leading them down a narrow aisle that ended in a locked fire door, forcing them to backtrack. Or, "I think I heard something this way," diverting them from their direct path, leading them deeper into the labyrinth of shelves where the silence pressed in, amplifying their every breath. Anya's suspicion, a cold, nagging presence, began to grow. She watched Elias, his movements fluid, his eyes constantly darting, not with fear, but with an odd, calculating alertness. He was always a few steps ahead, always suggesting the next turn. At one point, they heard heavy footsteps above them, echoing through the old building's ventilation shafts. Mark instinctively pulled Anya back, pressing her against a stack of dusty law books. Elias, however, paused, listening intently, a faint smile playing on his lips before he quickly masked it. Anya saw it, a flash of something unreadable, and her stomach clenched. "He's getting closer," Elias whispered, his voice low, but not trembling with fear. More like anticipation. "We need to be careful." Mark, his face beaded with sweat, wiped his brow. "This place is a goddamn tomb. Are you sure about this route, Vance? We're going in circles." "The fastest way, believe me," Elias replied, his voice calm, persuasive. "These archives are a maze, but they connect to the service tunnels, which lead directly to the security office. We just have to navigate the stacks." They pushed deeper into the archives, the oppressive silence broken only by the squeak of their shoes on the dusty concrete and the distant, ever-present growl of the storm. Anya's mind was racing, trying to connect the dots. Elias's intimate knowledge of the courthouse was not unusual for a seasoned attorney, but his calm under pressure, his almost serene detachment, was unnerving. And the way he kept leading them down dead ends, or paths that seemed to skirt danger rather than avoid it entirely. They rounded a stack of shelves, and a dark figure loomed in the aisle ahead. Mark's flashlight beam speared out, revealing a maintenance worker, cowering, his face streaked with tears. "He's here," the man sobbed, pointing a trembling finger down another aisle. "The killer. He was just there. He just looked." Mark moved to help the man, his professional instinct kicking in. But as he reached out, Elias was suddenly there, blocking his path. "No, too dangerous. He'll draw Thorn to us. We have to go." "We can't just leave him," Mark protested, his voice strained. "We have no choice," Elias insisted, his voice hardening, his eyes flashing with an unfamiliar cold intensity. "One life to save 3. He grabbed Anya's arm, his grip surprisingly strong. "This way." Anya pulled her arm free, her eyes locking with Elias's. "What are you doing?" she demanded, the accusation clear in her voice. The pieces were starting to click into place, a horrifying mosaic. Elias's face shifted, the mask of concern slipping, revealing something colder, more calculating. Mark stared at him, bewildered. "Vance, what in God's name are you talking about?" Elias didn't answer him. Instead, he reached into his jacket, not for a weapon, but for something else. A small, black, cylindrical object. He pressed a button. A low, high-frequency whine filled the air, agonizingly loud to Anya's ears. Mark cried out, clutching his head, dropping his flashlight as his knees buckled. The maintenance worker screamed, collapsing into a heap. The device, emitting an incapacitating ultrasonic pulse, was a specialized piece of equipment, not something an ordinary lawyer would carry. Anya felt a searing pain in her head, a hammer blow to her temples, but her rage, her shock, sharpened her focus. This wasn't just a simple escape. This was a conspiracy. Elias, his watchful gaze, his subtle misdirections, his chilling eloquence in defending Thorne's twisted philosophy. He wasn't just Thorne's lawyer, he was his disciple. "You son of a bitch!" Anya snarled, fighting through the piercing agony, her voice raw with betrayal. Elias smiled, a thin, humorless curl of his lips. The mask was fully off. "Anya, always so keen. You were meant for better things than this charade of justice. Thorne saw it. I saw it. The world needs a new architect, a new sculptor of truth. He will appreciate your defiance." He stepped back, keeping the device aimed at Mark, who writhed on the floor, groaning, incapacitated but not unconscious. Elias turned, his eyes piercing through the gloom, looking not at Anya, but beyond her. "The archives are a perfect place for a reckoning, wouldn't you agree?" Elias murmured, his voice now laced with an unsettling reverence. He gestured vaguely down a dark aisle deeper into the shelves. "He's coming for you, Anya. Consider it your final cross-examination." And then, with a final chilling smile, Elias Vance melted into the oppressive darkness of the archives, leaving Anya alone, her head throbbing, with Mark writhing in pain at her feet, and the knowledge that she was now hunted by two men. Her world, once defined by order and reason, had fractured into a terrifying, lawless landscape. She was trapped, but a new, cold fire ignited within her. Thorne thought he could break her. Elias thought he could deliver her. They had underestimated her. They had made a grave mistake. The piercing whine of Elias's device sliced through Anya's skull, a white-hot poker ramming into her brain. She stumbled, falling to one knee, her hands instinctively clamping over her ears. Mark Corrigan, writhing in agony, was already a heap on the dusty floor. The maintenance worker whimpered, unconscious. Elias, Thorne's twisted evangelist, vanished into the labyrinth of steel shelves, leaving her trapped, exposed, and vulnerable. Rage, a pure, incandescent flame, burned through the blinding pain. She fought against the ultrasonic assault, pushing herself upright, her vision blurring, her teeth gritted. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was personal. This was a war, fought not with laws, but with cunning and brutality. The device's whine began to fade, its power source perhaps dwindling, or Elias moving out of range. Anya staggered towards Mark, collapsing beside him. His breathing was shallow, his body convulsing. He wouldn't be moving anytime soon. Leaving him was not an option, but neither was staying. Thorne was coming. Her eyes swept the archive, a vast, shadowy expanse of forgotten knowledge. The irony was bitter. Here, surrounded by the weight of justice, she was truly alone, facing a betrayal that cut deeper than any wound. Elias knew this place, but so did she. Every nook, every forgotten passage, every structural quirk she'd studied for months, preparing for Thorne's trial, was now her only weapon. She had to move Mark fast. She scanned the towering shelves, searching for a place, a shadow, anything. Her gaze landed on an overturned cart hidden partially behind a particularly dense stack of legal volumes. It would offer a momentary reprieve, a false sense of security, but it was all she had. With a grunt, she began to drag Mark's heavy frame, her muscles protesting, the adrenaline coursing through her veins. He was dead weight, his groans muffled. The fear of Thorne's imminent arrival spurred her on, lending her a desperate strength she hadn't known she possessed. She finally pulled him behind the cart, obscured by the shadows and the towering shelves. He stirred, moaning softly, his eyes fluttering. "Anya, Thorne," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I know, Mark," she murmured, her voice tight, a cold determination hardening her features. "Just stay hidden. Don't make a sound. I'll be back." She pressed his service pistol into his hand, closing his fingers around the cold steel. It was a faint hope, but it was all she could offer. Now it was her turn to hunt. Elias's betrayal had unleashed a different beast within her. The prosecutor, the advocate for order, was gone. In her place stood a survivor, cold, calculating, and absolutely lethal. She moved through the archives, no longer feeling her way, but navigating by memory, by the detailed blueprints etched in her mind. Her footsteps were almost silent on the dusty concrete. The emergency lights, flickering weakly, cast long, distorted shadows that seemed to writhe and mock her. The air was thick with the scent of old paper and dust, a decaying tomb. Her first target was Elias. He was the weak link, the informant, the snake in the grass. He was also the most immediate threat, capable of leading Thorne directly to her. She pictured his smug smile, the cold glint in his eyes, and a fresh wave of fury propelled her forward. She heard him before she saw him. A soft rustle of movement further down an aisle, followed by the faint click of a door latch. Elias was trying to escape, or perhaps to rendezvous with Thorne. Anya pressed herself against a stack of boxes, her breathing shallow, silent. She waited, listening. The courthouse groaned around her, the storm's fury still raging outside, a symphony of chaos that masked her movements. Elias, she knew, would be expecting Thorne to do the hunting. He wouldn't be expecting her. She moved, swift and silent, rounding the corner just as Elias was about to slip through a heavy, unmarked service door. He saw her, his eyes widening in surprise, a flash of genuine fear replacing his smug confidence. "Anya!" he hissed, his hand reaching for the doorknob, attempting to pull it open. But Anya was faster. She launched herself forward, not with brute force, but with a calculated desperation. Her shoulder connected with his back, sending him sprawling. He cried out, hitting the concrete with a sickening thud. The small cylindrical device clattered from his hand, skittering across the floor and disappearing into a dark corner. Elias scrambled to his feet, fear turning to anger. "You fool! You're just delaying the inevitable!" Anya didn't reply. Words were a luxury she couldn't afford. She had seen the courthouse blueprints. She knew this service door. It led to a narrow, disused ventilation shaft, barely wide enough for a person. But more importantly, it was the only way into this particular section of the archives. She tackled him again, driving him back against the doorframe, slamming his head against the cold metal. Elias grunted, dazed but fighting back, his legal training giving way to primal panic. He lunged, attempting to grab her, but Anya twisted, her elbow catching him squarely in the jaw. This was her chance. She found the release latch, a rusty lever hidden behind a grimy panel. With a heave, she pulled it down. The heavy service door groaned, then slammed shut, locking with a resounding clang. Elias, still disoriented, stared at her, his eyes filled with disbelief. "Thorn needs me," he choked out, pounding on the sealed door. "He won't forgive you for this." Anya leaned against the door, catching her breath, her chest heaving. She felt no satisfaction, only a cold, grim resolve. Elias was no longer her problem. He was locked in, trapped in a forgotten part of the courthouse, a pawn removed from the board. If Thorn found him, that was his twisted justice. Now it was just her and Thorn, the sculptor. She began to move with purpose, no longer reacting, but planning. The courthouse was her domain now. She was an architect of traps, a cartographer of shadows. She knew its blind spots, its creaking floorboards, its echoes. Every detail she had painstakingly committed to memory during her trial prep, every structural weakness, every overlooked access panel became a potential snare. She used the building's old pneumatic tube system, designed for sending documents between floors, to create diversionary sounds, sending empty canisters hurtling through the ancient pipes, echoing through the walls like distant gunshots. She found a disused janitorial closet overflowing with old buckets and mops, and overturned them, sending a cascade of metallic clatter reverberating through the main hall, drawing Thorn's attention away from her true path. The emergency lights, failing completely in some sections, created pockets of absolute darkness, and Anya used them to her advantage. She would wait in the blackness, listening, learning, predicting Thorn's movements. She heard his footsteps, heavy and deliberate, echoing through the marble halls, closer now, a chilling rhythm in the oppressive silence. He was no longer toying with others. He was focused. He was coming for her. She envisioned the main courtroom, the heart of the courthouse, the stage where Thorn had once sat, impassive. It would be the final arena, a place of judgment, her judgment. She needed to lead him there, to corner him, to make him play by her rules. She navigated through the network of maintenance tunnels, a forgotten circulatory system beneath the courthouse's polished facade. The air was thick with the scent of stagnant water and mildew. Exposed pipes dripped, their rhythmic plinks echoing in the darkness. The storm still howled outside, a constant, violent presence. But here, underground, it was a distant memory. Anya emerged near the grand staircase, the vast, ornate hall, now a gaping maw of shadows. She could feel Thorn's presence, closer than ever. A primal fear clawed at her, but she pushed it down, replacing it with the cold logic of a predator. She knew a trick. A specific section of the marble floor near the jury box in the main courtroom, directly above a hidden access panel for electrical conduits. It was structurally sound, but with enough pressure and enough weight, it could give way. It was a secret she had stumbled upon while reviewing the courthouse blueprints, a detail overlooked by everyone but her. She moved quickly, deliberately, her knowledge of the building a sixth sense. She reached the courtroom first. It was a cavernous space, silent and dark, save for the weak glow of the emergency lights that struggled to penetrate the gloom. The air was heavy, charged with the lingering echoes of countless trials, now just specters of order. She stood behind the prosecutor's desk, her gaze sweeping the room. Her gaze settled on the spot near the jury box, the weak point. She needed something to draw his attention, to lure him there. She saw the heavy wooden gavel still sitting on the judge's bench. Anya picked it up. Its weight felt strange in her hand, a symbol of authority now twisted into a desperate tool. She held it, her knuckles white. Then she heard it. The heavy oak doors to the courtroom creaked open, slowly, deliberately. A shadow stretched into the room, long and menacing. Julian Thorne stepped inside, his pale eyes gleaming in the dim light. He looked utterly serene, his face unmarred by the night's violence, as if he had merely been on a leisurely stroll. He moved with an unnerving grace, his eyes locking onto Anya. He didn't rush. He savored the moment, the final tableau in his gruesome gallery. The storm outside seemed to crescendo, as if in anticipation. Anya Sharma. Thorne's voice was a low, silken whisper, resonating in the vast chamber. The tenacious prosecutor, the seeker of justice. He spread his hands, encompassing the room. And here we are, in the very sanctum of your belief. Tell me, Anya, what is justice in the dark? He walked slowly down the aisle, his gaze never leaving hers. You tried to cage me with your pretty words, your carefully constructed facts. But truth, Anya, is not something you can legislate. It is carved, shaped, created. He took another step, his shadow lengthening towards her. This is my canvas now, and you are my final masterpiece. Anya gripped the gavel, her hands trembling, but her gaze was steady. She would not break. You're no artist, Thorne. You're a monster, a coward who preys on the weak. Thorne chuckled, a dry, unsettling sound that echoed through the room. Weakness, Anya, is the natural state of man. Your laws, your order, they are merely an illusion, a flimsy veil over the chaos that truly governs us. Tonight, I stripped that veil away. I showed them the truth. He stopped near the jury box, precisely where Anya needed him to be. He leaned against the railing, his posture relaxed, almost casual. You saw Elias, didn't you? My true disciple. He understood. He saw the beauty in true judgment, the cleansing fire. He was ready to accept it. He smiled, a chilling, triumphant expression. You, however, cling to your dying ideals. Why, Anya? Why fight the inevitable? The storm outside hammered against the courthouse, rattling the windows, mimicking the frantic beat of Anya's heart. She knew this was it, the psychological battle Thorne craved. He wanted to break her mind, not just her body. He wanted her to embrace his nihilism, to acknowledge the futility of her life's work. Justice isn't about chaos, Thorne, Anya retorted, her voice firm, resolute. It's about choice. It's about accountability. It's about not letting men like you define what's real. Thorne's smile faltered slightly, still defiant, admirable, but futile. He pushed off the railing, moving towards her, a predatory glint in his eyes. You see the truth, Anya. You've walked through my art gallery tonight. You've smelled the fear, tasted the despair. Tell me, can you still believe in your precious order after all of this?" He was directly over the weak point now, his weight pressing down. Anya swallowed, her moment arriving. She moved quickly, abandoning the prosecutor's desk, not to run, but to strike. "I believe in this," she said, her voice ringing with a cold fury, and with all her might she slammed the gavel down on the marble floor, directly onto the critical seam in the jury box. A sickening crack split the air, louder than the storm, louder than Thorne's laugh. The marble groaned, then gave way with a screech of tearing stone and splintering wood. Thorne's eyes widened, a flicker of genuine surprise finally breaking his placid mask. He roared, not in pain, but in sheer, primal disbelief, as the floor beneath him collapsed. He plummeted downwards, a heavy, desperate sound of falling stone and splintering wood echoing into the darkness below. Anya stood over the gaping hole, the dust rising, the scent of damp earth and shattered stone filling the air. Thorne was not dead. She hadn't wanted him dead. She wanted him caged, trapped, reduced from a godlike sculptor to a mere mortal, imprisoned by the very architecture he had tried to desecrate. He was trapped in the hidden electrical conduit chamber beneath the courtroom, caught in her own meticulously planned snare. From the darkness below, she heard Thorne's enraged shouts, muffled, distorted, but unmistakably furious. He was trapped. Her plan, born of desperation and the intimate knowledge of the courthouse's bones, had worked. She stood there, breathing heavily, the gavel still clutched in her hand. Her body ached, her mind reeled, but she was unbroken. The storm outside began to recede, its fury spent, replaced by a low, persistent rumble. And then she heard it, distant but growing louder. The unmistakable clang of steel, the muffled shouts of men, the wail of sirens, finally cutting through the oppressive silence of the courthouse. The SWAT teams, the cavalry, had arrived. Dawn was breaking, a pale gray light beginning to filter through the courtroom's high arched windows, revealing the dust-filled air, the shattered marble, the remnants of a night of terror. The heavy main doors burst open, and a flood of tactical lights and armed officers poured into the room. They found her standing there, bloodied, bruised, her clothes torn, but defiant. She was alive. She was victorious. They found Julian Thorne, the notorious sculptor, trapped beneath the courtroom, raging against the broken marble and splintered wood that had become his cage. He was bruised and battered, his aura of terrifying serenity shattered, replaced by the raw, impotent fury of a cornered animal. Anya Sharma, the ambitious prosecutor, had survived. But as the officers gently guided her out of the ruined courtroom, past the gaping hole where Thorne had fallen, she knew she was not the same woman who had entered the courthouse just hours before. The night had etched itself onto her soul, leaving behind a cold, desolate landscape of trauma and a profound understanding of the darkness that lurked beneath the veneer of human civilization. The ghost of Thorne's unsettling smile, Elias's betrayal, and the screams echoing in the dark halls would forever haunt her. She had won, but the price had been her peace, her innocence, and the very foundations of her belief in the order she had fought so fiercely to uphold. The architect of justice had faced the sculptor of chaos, and while justice had prevailed, the scars of the battle would remain, a permanent, indelible mark on her very being.